Hi and welcome to Improve Your Voice. My name is Darren McStay and today we're looking at how you can learn lines and memorize lines much easier. Now, whether you're an actor or a speaker or just somebody who has to give presentations or be on the stage and perform somehow in front of others and remember what you're trying to say, these 3 tips are really going to help you embody and remember those lines without it being too much up here in your head. Because ideally, to be able to recount lines and remember things, it's not always about doing it consciously. Sometimes you want to have a deeper understanding in order for you to concentrate more and focus more on your audience, so the words will just flow and you don't have to worry about remembering them. They'll be there for you. Before we go on, just let me say that if you're enjoying this channel, please subscribe, hit the notifications bell and share it if it's of any value to you and you think it's of value to someone else. And if you'd like to support the channel in any way, you can check out one of my online courses, or you can even help buy me a book. There's a buy me a coffee link in which you can donate if you've got value from this channel and help me buy some books towards my new MFA course, which is coming up at the end of this year. And you know, in order to fund my way there, I'm trying to sort of collect a lot of information and get some money for books, so that would be really helpful. Anyway, let's crack into it. What I'm going to do, I know not everyone is an actor, but I'm going to actually use a text from Shakespeare. This is To Be or Not to Be, speech from Hamlet, and it's a classic. Everyone's heard of Shakespeare, but this isn't just about Shakespeare. You don't have to learn Shakespeare. I'm just using Shakespeare as an example, because it's pretty tricky to understand, and you don't have to do this. You just have to follow the steps that I'm going to use. I'm using Shakespeare because this will be useful for actors, because I'm going to be breaking the text down in a way that you can understand it, it's relevant to learning a speech or a presentation as well. Tip number 1, the first thing you really want to consider when you're learning your speech or your monologue or presentation is you need to understand it. You need to know what's going on. Trying to learn lines or trying to learn text that you don't really have a full deep connection with or really know what's going on. If you're just trying to learn words, you're never going to remember it. You can always be needing to check a prompter or asking for help or looking at your slides. So the best thing to do is write it down in your own language. So what I would do is try to break it down possibly into sections. And what I've done here, I've looked through the text and I've found 5 definite chunks of text. So for example, I'll read the first one to you. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. Now I've put that as one chunk, okay? This could be any text you like. But so for me there, I can sort of make a little underline, and that I will write that out in my own understanding. So I'm going to break it down. To be or not to be, that is the question. Well, what is that question? What does it mean? Well, taking a look at it and actually having played Hamlet in the past at drama school, I've got an idea. But I've written it down again anyway in my own language. And what I've put is this little chunk to me means, should I live or should I die? He's talking about suicide. He's contemplating killing himself. So is it better to live a tortured and terrible life or to kill myself? And that's essentially what that little chunk is about. So that whole little paragraph just means he's considering ending it, and that's quite heavy, right? And anyone can appreciate how disastrous and how heightened that emotion must be. And so if you consider that one chunk there is asking yourself, should I kill myself or not? You can quickly see how you can emotionally attach to that, because it's pretty shocking. Okay, but I've put it into a second, third, fourth, or fifth. But what I'll do, rather than reading the Shakespeare out for you, I'll read my interpretations of each chunk. So the first chunk, as I said, was, should I die or not? Is it better to live a tortured, terrible life or kill myself? And then he's saying, oh, what is death? Perhaps it's a way to overcome my painful existence, or maybe it's a dream, which is worrying, because if it is a dream, it might be a bad dream or a nightmare. So then I've gone into the third text, which for me, he's saying, fearing, if you have fear for a tortured afterlife and hell maybe, or remain in a terrible life here on earth, it's a big decision because you don't know what's going to happen after you die. And it's easy to understand that with a broken heart, a government that's against you, being oppressed, poor, wronged. Suicide is actually a viable option. And then I've gone into chunk 4. It might be better to fight to stay alive since I don't have any clue about what happens after death. And then into the final chunk, 5, knowing this is why we struggle to do it and remain alive despite our lives seeming not worth it. So what this whole speech essentially, for me, as a way I've understood it, is he's thinking, well, he's unhappy, clearly he's unhappy, depressed, and he's not enjoying his life. He's thinking of killing himself, but then he thinks, well, what does happen when you die? Is it worth it? What if things that happen when you die are worse than when you're alive? I think we can understand that from this Hamlet speech, he's thinking of killing himself, then he's considering what happens when he dies, and he's so unsure about that he's deciding, maybe I won't kill myself because I'm a bit tortured and conflicted whether it's going to be worse after I die than it is actually staying alive. So I think he's considering himself as being too scared to actually kill himself. Anyway, so now I've made this text in a way, I've written it out in a way that I can understand it, and I've broken it down into 5 sections. So what I can do now is just, I have 5, smaller chunks of text, which is a little bit easier to manage, and I can understand every block in its own right and what that means. And then what the second one means, what the third one means, what the fourth one means, and what the fifth one means. Rather than thinking about, I have to know what this whole thing is, I've just broken it down into easier to understand segments. So let me just run through that again, because tip 1 was actually 2 tips in one, and it's breaking down the text into smaller, more manageable chunks, easier to understand, and writing them out in your own words. Which brings me on to tip 2. Tip 2 is basically a really boring way of learning lines. However, it's actually pretty useful. It takes some time. This is not a quick fix necessarily, but it's going to help you just put the physicality of the words into your mouth. Now, to do this, you need to speak it aloud. So it could be a monologue like this, or it could be a speech or a presentation, as I've already said. But what you're going to do, you're going to read the first word, to. Then you're going to read the first 2 words, to be. Then you're going to read the first 3, to be or. Then continue like that, to be or not. To be or not to. To be or not to be. To be or not to be that. To be or not to be that is. To be or not to be that is the. To be or not to be that is the question. So, to be or not to be, that is the question. And I would go through the whole text from beginning to end. So I would eventually read the whole thing, and it's going to take a while because obviously the further you get, the more you're reading. And this is a way to drill lines. It's almost like writing lines on the chalkboard, to get children to remember what they've done wrong, like Bart Simpson at the beginning of The Simpsons. I will not throw the cat out of the window. I will not throw the cat out of the window, or whatever the naughty things he writes on the board are. So that is a bit tedious. However, what you'll find is you might not remember all of it right to the end, but you will certainly get a big chunk of it because you would have said the first line like many times. And in fact, by the time you get to here, you've said everything many times, and your mouth will have vocalized and physicalized it. Your muscles would have worked, and what happens, you start getting neuro connections. Your body remembers what comes next and the flow and the pattern and the rhythm of the speech. And whether this is a speech, or a monologue like this, it's something happens physically that helps you remember things because it's in your body. It's not necessarily emotional, it's not necessarily psychological, it's just physical. And there's nothing wrong with that because then once you have the physicality of it, you can start considering the emotions and you can start playing more with what you have because you just have it in your body more. And so that was my tip 2. Tip 3 now, and this is one that creates a lot of controversy, and between actors, a lot of people don't really like doing it this way, but I find it very useful because it's not just for actors, it's also for public speakers, and it's easy to understand. And what it is basically, we've already broken this down now into different sections. you can then go through each section and consider, especially if it's, not a monologue, especially if it's, a speech or a presentation, you can consider, rather than how you're going to say it, but more how you're going to affect the audience with it. Now, this is called actioning. Essentially, you're putting action behind the text. You're giving it a meaning. So let me give you a clear idea what I mean by that. Let's take the first line of this. To be or not to be, that is the question. So just saying it is fine. It means the words it means, and every person who's listening will take it differently. But you can actually choose to put something else behind that. What if I were to say it with a bit more, if I was trying to entice you, for example, like this is a verb. Actions are verbs, okay? So they're doing something. They are actually things you can use to make something happen. So let's try it again. To be or not to be, that is the question. Now, I wasn't thinking whisper, and I wasn't thinking do it low. I was just thinking, how would I try to entice someone? And that's just naturally what I did. Whether it was good or not, some of you might think it was great, some of you might hate it. But the point is that people are all different anyway. It's subjective. Everyone's going to take what you say differently. The most important thing is that you find a way of connecting with the text and finding a way that you can try to affect the audience, whether it's successful or not. Because what will happen is, once you've done that, you sort of switch your left-right brain over, and rather than concentrating on the words themselves, you start connecting to a way to approach and to act upon your audience or who you're speaking to. So whether it's monologue, again, like I said, or whether it's just some plain old text about a presentation, you can actually not have to think about the words. You can think about how you want the words to affect the person you're speaking to. Another clear and obvious one that they use with actioning is one called flirting. So if I was going to be quite flirty with you, hey, how are you doing? Once again, I noticed my voice dropped. Sorry, I know that's terrible. But I could put that as the line. To be or not to be, that is the question. And that just gives it a very different feeling, whether it was flirty to you or not. It doesn't matter. The connection that I make is what's important. And that will help me think of, I'm going to flirt now. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm trying to achieve. And these meanings and these kind of actions and these verbs that you can put behind the text will actually change. That they will come quite naturally. You might notice that the audience is responding in a certain way and decide to change your approach. And this might then change the way you say those lines, but you're not thinking about how you're saying the lines. You're actually being in the moment, you're being very present, and these give you a tool to help you to stop thinking about it. Now, if you've gone through the whole text, broken it into smaller sections, like in tip 1, and you've also understood and written it out in your own words, you've got a good understanding. Then if you go through every line, as I said, one word at a time, and then going back to the beginning, you will have physicalized it, and then by putting an action in, by putting a verb in, you will start to find ways of connecting to your audience and stop thinking so much about the words. And once you've done that, you have got it. You've got it embodied. And then once you're able to speak it, and once you're able to deliver the words because they're in your physicality and you know how you want to affect the audience, you will start to be more relaxed, and you will start to find emotion might even come. There might be some feeling involved because you're not in your head, you're in your body. And that's where the acting and the presence and being a good performer, that's where it comes from. It comes from a place of relaxation and tapping in to the truth about how you feel about something, because you'll be listening to it yourself and not thinking about it. Okay, hopefully that's useful, certainly to actors, but maybe to people who are public speakers and giving presentations as well. It might be a bit tricky, but I suggest you go through it. It doesn't have to be Shakespeare. Go through all these tips. What I'll do, I'll put a transcription of this on my website at vocabilities.com, and you can check it out. There'll be a link in the box below. And don't forget, if you get value from these videos, then do hit like and subscribe. It really does help me out. And leave a comment. It'd be nice to know who's out there. And if you really want to help donate and towards my books for university, then you can hit the buy me a book button or buy me a coffee button below. And I thank you very much for anyone who does. I'm Darren McStay. This is Improve Your Voice. And until the next time, look after your voice.
I have so many tales to tell, and up till now I've been telling them real badly, so